As a reaction, see they trade the Tinubu tax reform bill, when Northerners they provoke, say the tax bill go impoverish them because they don't get consumption capacity. Presidency don't come and come talk, say make Northerners metete, say make they relax. Say the tax reform bill no be wetin go impoverish the North like wetin they talk. Say na misconception and misunderstanding between the Northern governors. Now they bring all this talk.
Let's examine that contentious issue of tax reform in Nigeria, a country that for decades has struggled with its below world average tax collection. Successive governments have tried to address the issue as a way to reduce reliance on debt financing and to tackle inflation. But no one's been able to get under the bonnet, which is why President Tinubu has sent 4 tax reform bills to the National Assembly. Well, like all things in this country, there are competing political blocs, and from the north has come stiff opposition, with its leaders expressing fears that the bills are against the interests of the region and will put it at a financial disadvantage. They've been calling for the bills to be withdrawn for further consultation. But the government says there's no question of that happening. So why is the Tinubu administration drawing the battle lines over this issue when the north is adamant that it doesn't favor the region? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the Special Advisor on Policy Communication to the President, Daniel Bwala. Great to see you, Daniel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
How have you been doing?
Great. Great.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, I understand a pro-Northern coalition group was at the National Assembly earlier today to drum up support for the passage of that controversial and contentious bill. I guess they want to show that not everybody in the North is opposed to it. So somebody said that I guess you've managed to round up some of your chums and got them to storm the National Assembly and throw their weight behind that bill.
You know, thank you for having me. I am from the North, and I am really saddened by the notion generated in the media that it is a North versus the South thing. I'm not from the media in the sense of media people, but people creating the narrative, and that the tax reform bills are built or designed to afflict the North. That is far from the truth. And the problem we always have, quite frankly, is that sometimes we have failed to look at the difference between politics and policy. But let me just go straight to the arguments.
Sure.
The argument of few people, I have to use the word very advisedly, because I've seen lots of Northerners who supported the bill. Lots of them from different parts of the North, Northeast, North Central, and Northwest. But those who are afraid of the bill, what they have pushed as the major argument is that the bills, if passed to law, will cause hardship to the poor people in the North. Now, if I have to take them on that argument, then my case will be that contrary is actually the reason. I mean, the very opposite is the point of the bill. Because if you say that the bill is going to impoverish the North or is going to afflict poor people, it is actually this proposed bill that is addressing the problem that the poor people encounter. Because, for example, we have an existing tax laws in Nigeria to the effect of, let's say, things that affect the poor people in the North. If you go to eat, if you go to a restaurant now, you eat, you pay VAT. If you enter public transport, you pay VAT.
But that VAT is being removed, isn't it? It's not, there's no VAT on food anymore.
Correct.
There won't be.
On food, on health care, even on personal income tax, even for small and medium enterprise business people. So all of the issues that affect the poor and the very poor, these tax laws actually addressed it. Not against the poor, but in favor of the poor.
But not everything, though, because, I mean, those who oppose it, I mean, they're talking about the VAT, for example. They say that, that yes, you know, you're saying that those below a certain earning threshold will benefit, but that if you charge companies higher VAT, they will simply pass it on to the consumers. So if corporate taxes go up, goods in the market, it may not necessarily be food, but goods in the market go up, which will affect lower income consumers. I mean, if you're, if it's, whether it's, tissue paper or toilet paper or whatever, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Soap and things like that, it'll affect them as well.
So the reason I'm saying that is because we want to take argument on their face value,
right,
on a case-by-case basis. So let us, except if they agree with me that the argument should no longer be about we are protecting the poor, because it is a conclusive fact that this bill supports the poor and not oppose the poor. If you talk about cyclical effect of economic dynamics, it's everywhere in the world. Once this one goes this way, there's likely to go. How many poor people buy toilet paper? If we have to put the argument
well,
further,
I don't know.
Nobody, in the north where I come from,
but they have a right to buy toilet paper.
They have a right to buy.
And if they decide they want to buy toilet paper and it goes higher, it's impoverishing them.
But what is very, very essential to them at the moment is
food.
Hunger and food. And the president has been clear about that. The policy of the government has been clear about that. In fact, even the recent meeting the president traveled to, the G20, is a global focus now. The governance reform across the world is to deal with hunger and then climate change. Hunger and then climate change. If we look at the revolutionary policy in the agriculture of the president. So the president, as a president, has a vision for the poor. As a government, he has policy for the poor. The tax, which is part of the many reform policies introduced, is also in favor of the poor. But I can understand if people want to make elitists.
I've seen that bill, and I do agree with you that it certainly leans in the direction. I mean, I've scanned through it. I haven't sort of read it all. But I mean, it certainly leans in the direction of trying to make life better for the poor, small, medium enterprises, and all of that. But in that regard, why do you think opponents have such a big problem with this bill? Why they're opposing it so much?
Well, the thing is that, like I said earlier, that sometimes we play politics and policy together, or we mix politics and policy, and sometimes in a bid to oppose or support policy, we bring politics. And because they are very, very similar, sometimes you see that a vast number of people get misled by those who play politics on policy, thereby misleading the general public. So I see that, if you remember when local government autonomy was introduced, the governors didn't favor that, even though it is a good governance approach to free democracy. So this one is also part of those. That's why you see that it is governors who are opposing that. But what does the law say about lawmaking process? And the president has been clear about that when they passed, the National Council of State said that they are asking for a return of the bill. He said, let it go through the legislative process. We run a democracy here. The lawmaking power in Section 4 lies with the National Assembly. The members of the National Assembly represent their respective states. But the reason why I'm very emphatic about this issue of poverty is because I come from the North, and the conversation in the North is that this will bring poverty to you, or this one will impoverish you. Let us clear about that. The tax is in favor of the poor. But the argument that most people make, in fact, I even look beyond that. It is not even the issue of North and South. It is just the issue of certain elites who feel that this policy is going to reduce the extent of the revenue they have to make, to do one or two things.
Right. Well, but that's an important point, because, I mean, the problem seems to be that the distribution formula is perceived not to favor the North.
Not really.
Well, that's the perception.
Yes.
And that's coming,
clearing.
That's coming from the governors as well. I mean, even Olisa Bakoba, the senior advocate of Nigeria, I mean, he put it fairly clearly when he said that the sharing formula in this proposed tax reform bill is not the same as that for sharing, for instance, oil revenue. And the North is wondering why.
If you apply the oil revenue share to this tax, that is when you will say it will inflict or afflict the North. You see, this idea of 50-30-20 being switched to 60-20-20, if you look at the dynamics of the distribution, and it is quite there, the data is there. There are cases in which it favors the North proportionately. There are cases in which the North benefit more, and there are cases where, in fact, it's not even the North and the South, because this same argument that some of the states in the North are making, that same argument could have been made by some parts of the South, who would have suffered more than some parts of the North.
Okay, let me just ask you to hold for a minute, because I think we have a clip from the National Assembly today. Okay, these are some of the people who are protesting. in favor of that bill rather than against it. They stormed the National Assembly earlier today to make the point that they agree with the tax reform.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to hear a clip from someone speaking there.
You know that.
Okay, but keep talking.
Yeah, you know that what the North is very, very professional.
Yeah.
About is politics. I have a feeling that this whole opposition
He
team...
said he's very professional about politics.
Yes, they are very, very good in playing politics.
Right.
I see it even more of playing a politics for negotiation. They want to bargain. They want to have a bargaining stand with the president. On whatever issue, I don't know. But if it is strict application of this tax for the purpose of dealing with poor people of Nigeria, we make it clear we're disseminating this information in the languages from the North for people to know that this is not utter. I even saw a fake news circulating that the president recently signed a contract with Macron for the recolonization of the northern Nigeria.
Well,
it is that bad.
That's preposterous.
It is that bad.
Yeah.
So let the governors, I know that they are working together with the president, let the governors, and you know one good thing, to be fair to the tax team, this is one of those teams in recent history and memory of our democratic experience that have done wider consultation, more than any other subject. In the last 2 weeks, conversation around the tax reform have happened across platforms more than 200 times, just to communicate to the people. And this is open. You can see it. On this side, it favors Lagos. On this side, it favors Kanu. On this side, it favors Borno. On this side, there are the application of the tax law in terms of dealing with hunger, bringing good governance. It is the best that has ever happened.
But what about the collection process of the revenues and those tax revenues?
There are some taxes that benefit consumption. There are some taxes that benefit production.
Well, VAT is a consumption tax, isn't it?
Yes, but even within the precinct of VAT, the distribution formula is such that there are those that go for equity distribution, or those that go for population, and then those that are on derivation in the stricter senses. And what I told a friend of mine, come from the North, I said, if you are making the argument that this tax is introduced to afflict the North from the South, who, apart from MTN or one other company, is the highest paying tax man in Nigeria? Is the Northerner. Where is his business? In Lagos. Why not in Kano or Maiduguri? Because Lagos climate...
You talk about Dangote and people like yeah.
Because Lagos provide the climate for him to benefit. Most of these governors, their posh houses are in Lekki, in Banana Island, in the places where there is value on the asset or value on business. So let us discuss business and take away this issue of North versus South. It is one of those things that will not make for the progress of Nigeria. If you have a case to make, come with data, come with statistics. If you have an argument to make it on the basis of facts that can be verified. But the idea you carry some of us, who innocent Northerners, who believe that this tax is good, and you're saying it afflicts us. No, I don't think that is a good argument to make. And I'm calling on all the stakeholders from the northern Nigeria to look at it from the point of view of construction rather than destruction. Look at those areas that affect. Negotiation is there. It's going into public hearing. There may be, in the course of this conversation, one tinkering here or there, but you cannot throw the baby with the bathwater. And if it is one that touches on the needs of the poor, this tax reform is for pro-poor and not anti-poor.
Well, certainly there have been a lot of people from the North who support the bill. I mean, we've had quite a few of them sitting where you're sitting who make the same sort of argument. But do you think this problem can be solved by simply devolving revenue collection to the states?
What kind of solution? Because this tax system is one of the many reforms of this administration. There are many reforms. This is one of those. They call it fiscal reform or whatever. In terms of revenue collection, it's easy. It's the easiest thing to do. We already have a revenue collection institution that by this act coming into law will be redesigned. When the revenue is collected, it will be distributed according to what the law provides for it. So there will not be a problem in terms of distribution. And let me tell you something, Mr. Charles, and by extension the Nigerian people. Some of our governors who decry this issue of tax and say to afflict the North, you need to go to our respective states and see the taxes that are collected on people who do keke na pep, right? To the point where the people are living like a slave. If a man is riding keke na pep in a day, how much does he make in a day? And you subtract that from how much he pays as a tax in that state. At the end of the day, he goes home with little or nothing. Is that not part of the things that impoverish the North again? Why is it that it is this tax that impoverish the North, but the taxes we collect in our respective states without concomitant constructive effect in that? So let us, I think that 2027 is not here. Let us not spark the conversation for politicking of 2027. Let us focus on governance. And I'm happy that even the governors are open to conversation. They are open to negotiation. They are open to deliberation. The fact that they express their fears is not a problem. The problem becomes when you now extend it further into misleading, misinforming, or confusing the people from the demographic where you come from.
Right.
Because democracy always entrenches and promotes conversation and dialogue.
Let's move away from taxes. Let's look at the president who's been traveling.
Right.
He's been in France. You mentioned earlier that there was some story going around that he's trying to get Macron to colonize the North. I think that's beyond the pale. Yeah. But I mean, apart from outlandish stories like that, I mean, what do you actually see that he's achieved in visits like that?
You know, the president is the chief spokesman of the government. He is the prophet of the prophecy of renewed hope. He takes that message to wherever he can take in order to improve on the livelihood, the well-being, and the prosperity of Nigeria. What makes for a state or nation to succeed is when that state is able to engage with other partners in terms of deepening trade, deepening investment, promoting culture, promoting all kinds of things.
So you see value in that kind of
It is evident in the various agreements that were signed. He's in South Africa, again deepening on that, taking Nigeria on the map so that Nigeria will be a destination where everybody will be interested in doing business. And we're seeing that already as part of those gains. It's just that our conversation hasn't gone in that line. You have seen the growth of our GDP. You have seen unemployment decreasing. We have seen the petrol import has reduced significantly.
Well,
we have
a lot of experts doubt those figures.
No, but
For
they are
example,
facts that you can see.
The GDP figures.
What is
and,
there?
And you know, the thing about GDP is that you have to, I mean, you're a well-educated person, and I'm sure you know you have to kind of break it down. And see where the figures went up, where they went down, what the nuances are.
So in the Bureau...
And in GDP, for example, if your population goes up, the GDP figures go up because more people are spending money. It doesn't mean that those people are richer. It doesn't mean like they're earning more money. It doesn't mean that their standard of living has improved. It just means that there are more people and therefore more money is being spent.
Whatever is worth the conversation for GDP, with its own connotation, implication, and explanation. If the GDP is not increasing, it is not increasing, even if everybody has food to eat. That is economics, right? What we're saying, the numbers are favorable to the policy. Now, it is left for economics or those people who doubt to debate that. The president did not issue that. It's not a press release from the presidency.
No, I understand that. It's from the National Bureau of Statistics. But I mean, you were talking about the president and his trip abroad. And I remember you saying very clearly that Mr. Tinubu has abandoned his manifesto and is relying on foreign trips. This is about a year ago.
Okay.
Is relying on foreign trips with photo ops. That you sounded very belligerent at the time. I think that was during an interview I had with you on his first 100 days in office. You said it was all a big spin that's riddled with misinformation and very little substance. You said it would have been good news if it was true, but that it's not, that it was all an over-exaggeration, all these foreign trips abroad. And I'm wondering how you can justify your assessment now of his foreign trip abroad and the benefit of it, and sort of compare it to what you said
there. There are 2 points. The first one was, you said it a year ago. Where was my position a year ago in the opposition? What is the duty of opposition in any democratic government? You are British, so you can see even with the burden of
I'm Nigerian
and the labor,
as well.
but also British. The context I want to talk about is British.
Right.
You see how the conservative that just left government not long ago and the Labour Party are now in charge of the government. The last Prime Minister's question, you saw how Badenoch was attacking the policy of the Labour Party. That is politics. Opposition should oppose. Goes without saying. Now,
yeah, but opposition opposes based on facts that they detect.
Right.
So was your opposition based on facts?
I oppose for whatever it's worth. That was the position I took.
Right.
But the good answer to that is that from that 1 year you talked about to now, What have we seen? I talked about the GDP growth. I talked about the unemployment decreasing, by 4.3. I talk about petrol has reduced the exportation.
Right.
The importation. We're exporting it to African countries. I talk about crude oil output has gone beyond 1.2 to 1.8, close to 2 million. I talk about our debt, revenue and debt service ratio. We have been able to maintain $40 billion in the excess reserve, in the foreign reserve, despite the spending in terms of servicing debt and spending, in the clearing of the backlog, forest backlog. You look at the tax reform bills, local government autonomy. Between that 1 year and today, you will have to be possessed by evil spirit,
yes,
not to see
the
progress that is being made.
You certainly have a point. I mean, that there is nothing wrong, and I don't just sit here and say, blah blah blah. You see what I mean? I mean,
no, but there are some of your colleagues that do that.
Well, actually, you can change your position based on the progress that you see being made within society. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I wonder is things that, for example, you also said that you believe President Tinubu bought his election results. Do you still stand by that?
That was a politics.
No, but when you say politics, are you saying that you no longer believe that he corruptly purchased his election?
Yes, I no longer believe. I no longer believe.
What made you change your mind?
Because then I was playing politics. I didn't care.
You mean because you're working for him now? I mean, that's okay.
No, not because I'm working for him. Let me give you an example.
It's all right to say that
between January and when did I start working for him? 2-3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
But in the past 1 year, what was I talking about?
No, obviously your position had started to align with where you were aiming to go to.
No, but the fact of the matter is, the president is the president of Nigeria.
Right.
You can still stay in your party, assuming I was in PDP, and still commend the president if he does something that is right. There are people in APC right now, they are under the progressive umbrella, that disagree with the president. It's democracy.
No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that you were very specific when you said that the president bought his election results.
And I'm very specific
in other words,
now to say...
You think it was his victory was not authentic.
And I'm very specific in answering that I distanced myself from that. I made that comment immediately after the election, even before we went into tribunal. I'm a lawyer by training. One thing that I must know is the rule of law. That is where we eat, we feed. That is what forms the basis of who I am today. This course of whether he bought or not was run through a judicial process. Up to the highest court of the land, it was rested. We call it res judicata. The judgment of the Supreme Court is binding on all authorities, and everybody abides by that. So to overflow that issue, am I a beer parlor? We used to have this beer parlor analyst. I'm not a beer parlor analyst.
You're an armchair analyst.
No, I'm fact-based analyst.
Well, let's leave it at that, shall we?
Thank you.
President Sikwa assured the Northerners say justice go dey for every state across the nation. Say the tax bill now wetin they suppose accept because it go bring stability to the economy. The tax reform bill don collect many criticisms since they introduced am. Senator Ali Ndume sef don talk before say the tax bill na dey dead on arrival. But Senator Ali, they may not stop the implementation because many National Assembly members say the reason why the tax bill need implementation because according to history, you don't see when they visit tax reform bill and the one with the operator don't be outdated. Senator Seraki Dixon now go to come and talk say they no fit dey pay by some money give Lagos State. Say this tax bill now work on development. Say it go correct all the concern when they get. Say every state now got to get the dividends of what they consume for the state. No be say money when they generate for Bayelsa they go pay and give Lagos State because say the company when they operate for Lagos State get headquarters for for Bayelsa get headquarters for Lagos. Understand? So this now waiting the tax bill need to correct. So Northerners, I calm down, make on settle insecurity for our place. I go farm, go to do productive activity. On our governors, no the help matters. I go talk on our governor. You understand? On our governors, no the help to the restore peace for the area. You might say the not governors go they go catch Boko Haram people. They go see the repentant Boko Haram. They go rehabilitate them. They go recruit them into the security personnel. They go recruit them into their police. Military say that the Peter Boko Haram. Imagine governors when they negotiate with criminals. How peace won't come the region? So men are go settle on our region, you understand?